Hello and welcome to the Cash News Podcast, your go-to source for informative conversations about all things cash and currency. From cash security and payments technology to the cash supply chain, we're here to share insights on the issues shaping the world of cash today. Join your hosts, Tom Meehan, Shaun and Brad Moody, as they dive into the latest trends, strategies, and technology. This is the Cash News Podcast. Now, here's Tom, Shaun, and Brad.
Hey everybody, Shaun here with Brad. Here. Yeah, we are in Vegas at IACOA. Had some really interesting panels and discussions so far this morning. I was a little scared. We had a former mobster talking to us this morning.
That's right.
A little different, a little graphic, but it was good.
Learned a lot about the laws that are being created and dismantled. So some exciting things coming for the armored industry for sure. Some great things for cash usage, which is obviously why we're here. So happy to see some states adopting the requirements to accept cash as a form of payment. So always good news. Always good news.
It was a whole legislative update that they talked about this morning.
That was fascinating and scary at the same time.
I was going to say we had a lot of scary this morning, right?
Yeah.
The mobster followed by the new regulations that are out there and circulating at the state level. So yeah, we're hoping for a lot more. We've got the rest of today and tomorrow, so almost 2 full days left. A lot of good networking last night.
Absolutely.
If you saw this room we're in, it's filled with different suppliers and a lot of folks around. So good energy. We're thrilled to be here, and we look forward to sharing with you some more updates and some interviews we're going to do with some folks that are here
That's right.
over the next day or two.
Yeah, it's perfect. So we got everybody in the same room, and we'll bring you some quality guests. Appreciate it. Thanks all. See you soon.
See ya.
Hey, thank you for joining. My name is Brad Moody. We have Mr.
Shaun hanging out with you.
And our very special guest, Michael Gaul from Lauer's Risk Group. Michael, if you can, give an explanation of who you are, what you do.
I'm a EVP of Strategic Markets. I help connect people who have risk with people who can help them. Been doing that for about 20 years with Lauer's Risk Group. So
it's a lot of connections.
It's a lot of connections.
He's seen a thing or two, right?
For sure, I've seen a thing or two. I tell people that I don't think you can surprise me anymore, because you never underestimate the human capacity to perform dumb things that are sometimes criminal acts. It's a wild ride sometimes, but it's also just a great group of people who really care about what they do, and we protect people's lives and their property in tangible ways, and we have a good time doing it.
Yeah, that's a fact. So kind of thought, Michael's experience really drives a different perspective, since Lauer's and Associates and Lauer's Risk Group do a lot of security assessments out there, and they're do reporting for the National Armored Car Association. Then they see a lot of things in the environment from a global perspective, not just the U.S. So I thought there's nobody better than to have Michael here to kind of talk about some of the things that he's seen in the industry, some of the things that are preventative methods, some things that would, even some war stories we could talk about from our old days.
Yeah,
and,
we got some war stories.
Yeah, to talk about, again, how people are people and people are messy. So, Michael, I kind of leverage you. What's going on out there?
Almost every risk has a human capacity to it, has a human facet to it, right? And people are your greatest strength, your greatest competitive advantage in so many ways, but they're also your greatest weakness. And in the CIT ecosystem, one of the challenges we have is just complacency, right? We've seen it over and over again. I've done this stop 1 million times. I know the cash office manager by first name and know who her kids are, right? And over time you get lulled into,
Very true.
And you're just not. We call it having an alert presence, right?
Yep.
And so look around, and so I saw the other thing we have. Was an issue in the CIT space is morale. I was at a gas station, and armored driver was putting gas in his truck, and his VR vest has a morale patch on it. It's supposed to have his name, but it says nobody.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that. Yeah,
and so I'm thinking, maybe he just doesn't want people to know his name, but maybe he feels like he's nobody, and he's treated like he's nobody, and he does this humdrum job that's it's not kind of dangerous, it is dangerous, and so I think that's something that gets overlooked. I mean, there'll be some horrific thing that happens in the space, and because we do the reporting we do, my phone rings, and it'll be some reporter asking, well, what about armored car violence trends? And I'm like, well, what about them? It's an armored car, and the driver and messenger both carry firearms because it's dangerous, and so that's not a trend. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's just the fundamental reality of what we do. And so,
fundamentally, what do you see as far as ATM usage and cash usage, in the environment? Or, I know that robberies are robberies, but
robberies are robberies.
They're not after coin; they're after money, right? So,
and so what we're seeing is, there's a lot of pressure on armored from a logistics standpoint to make the stops and keep the machines full.
Yeah.
Right. And so what's happening is the machines are loaded heavier than they were 10 years ago.
Yeah, very true.
Right. And in some instances, there'll be more than one machine loaded heavier. Right. And so, I think what you have to remember is that the bad guys do this like it's their job. They're very creative. They sit up at night and think of ways to
That's true.
Get the money, right? And they're watching you. And so the other thing is, the cashier at the convenience store knows when that machine gets filled. And, what do we know about the cashier at the convenience store, right? And so we've seen a spate, if you will, of sort of mechanical attacks. One of the challenges with some of these day safe ATMs is they're not really safes.
Right.
They're heavy duty secure lock boxes, but it's not a TL30 safe. So, I think everybody has to be mindful of what's the word I'm looking for? You have to be mindful and observant of what's going on there.
Yeah.
And some of these attack tools, I mean, you can buy a used Jaws of Life on eBay.
Yeah.
And so, it'll open a 24-hour safe like a tin can.
Yeah, like what was going on in Prince George County a couple of years ago, right? Or even as recent as the end of the year. Especially when you put the ATM in the very front of the store.
Well,
it's pretty simple to.
One of the other things that's happening is, putting the ATM in the front of the store. You got to understand, you knock off an ATM, it's a property crime.
Yeah,
right. I mean, you please understand that ATM, that non-bank ATM, and even some bank ATMs are not covered by federal statute. So you get a deployer who puts a machine in the front of the store, and somebody rams it. They do $500,000 worth of property damage in the store, and they take the ATM out.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what's the incentive for the owner of that store to put an ATM back? So in urban areas, there's actually a shortage of cash, or there's a shortage of access to cash.
But it's and you mentioned about bank ATMs. It's with everything going up in price, it has over the past 5 years. I'm not talking about this past 90 days, but when you look at the usage of cash, things cost more, right? So the banks I've seen reacted by putting more 50s and 100s cassettes in there. So now that value of going into an ATM has gotten a lot heavier.
Right.
The amount of cash in there. So, which heightens all that risk level. So
yeah, well, and the other thing is, one of the other problems with ATMs is, you can have two ATMs that are manufactured by that same manufacturer. They are exactly the same. And I got one FI who's got to, he's got to process it with 20 steps, and I got another one that processes it with 50.
Right. Yeah.
And Armored is on site longer than they would have been 10 years ago when we're just putting 20s in the thing. And you don't have all this reconciliation.
That's right.
So the longer Armored's on that site, the higher the risk. Right?
What do you think about with the advent, since a lot of banks are converting, Chase has done it, and Wells Fargo is in the process of converting to more of the recyclers? Do you think that it's a bigger risk for the ATM of stealing it, or do you think what?
I just think that's a marketplace reality because Armored is struggling with logistics.
Yeah.
And there's lots of reasons for that. The other thing is, everybody wants to point the finger. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people want to point the finger at Armored, right? Retail wants to point the finger at Armored. Well, retail's part of the problem too. Right?
Retail and banking.
And banking, that's exactly right. So the recycling, the recycling side of it, I think it just makes a lot of sense, just because it doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
It's not crossing the pavement.
Yeah. The one thing that bothers me, or worries me, is a better word, is from a recycling standpoint, is when you throw crap currency in as a deposit. Now, so years ago, my former life, we would have these guys would jam the ATMs on purpose to get somebody to come in and service it, right? The NCR and Diebold
that person becomes a
and
target.
that person is a target. So we've seen that be reacted by them having guards and come out there with that process. But now you just think of the source liabilities now.
Yeah.
It's a lot more, and I kind of think that until I've harped on it forever, but until the swap rate is adjusted and banks start making more money as a form of deposit than
I think
storage of value.
I think one of the other things that's happening is, COVID, there was just a labor shortage, particularly in retail during COVID. And so, you didn't have as many people in the stores. The cash vault manager at the retail location is busy ringing up a customer while Armored's waiting in the store with a bag full of money.
Yeah.
And we talked to several retailers and said, look, you need to understand there is real risk to your brand if something bad goes down because you don't have enough staffing. And heaven forbid somebody's injured or hurt or whatever. But that's just a reality. So for me, time on stop is something I'm concerned about. So
perfect. Well,
hey,
Shaun, you did a great job.
I tried. You made it easy. I'm glad you joined the podcast because I can just sit
it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier for you. It's a lot easier.
No, we appreciate it. No, but as always, Michael, thank you for being an attendee and a better friend.
Yeah,
known each other for a very long time.
Appreciate that.
I appreciate you for stepping in and taking the call to help educate and save some people. So I appreciate it.
That's what we do.
Until then, I appreciate everybody's time, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Cash News Podcast. We hope you found this episode insightful. Don't forget to like and review us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter, and be sure to visit us at thecashnews.com to stay up to date with the latest on the world of cash. Thanks again for listening to the Cash News Podcast.